So let's now add some code to receive push notifications. And for that, I'm back here in this chat screen widget. Because in the end, it's this widget here where I want to set up this push notifications logic. And it's this widget instead of the auth screen or the app widget here, for example, because I know that users were logged in once they are on the chat screen. Only authenticated users reach this screen. And push notifications only matter to authenticated users because in this app here, I'm sending push notifications whenever a new message was created. And since those messages can only be sent and viewed by authenticated users, it doesn't make much sense to set up push notifications and ask the user for permission to receive push notifications before they were logged in at least once. Therefore, it's in this chat screen where I want to set up push notifications, and set up push notifications in the end means that we want to ask the user for permission. That's especially important for iOS devices. And we also need to get the address of the device on which the app is running, because that address will be important for sending push notifications thereafter. Now, to set up push notifications here in the chat screen, we should start by converting this stateless widget to a stateful widget, because I need to use this initState method here again, which we can use in this state class. Because this method will only run once when this widget is first loaded in the end, and it's therefore the perfect place to do some initial setup work. And it's therefore now in this widget where I want to ask for permissions and get the address of this device. Now we can do all these things by using Firebase Messaging, a new class, a new object which we can use, which is provided here by the Firebase Messaging.dart file. And I'll just quickly reorder those imports, but it's this import here that must be added to use Firebase Messaging. And on Firebase Messaging, we can again use instance, as we did it for all these other Firebase packages as well, to get access to this Firebase messaging object. I'll just name it FCM here. Now on this Firebase Messaging object, we then got various properties and methods that we can use. For example, we got the request permission method, and you should call this method first. Request permission, as the name suggests, asks the user for permission to receive and handle push notifications. Request permission returns a future and also takes a couple of parameters with which you could fine-tune which kind of notifications you want to receive. Now, since this in the end returns a future, which then in turn yields an object with more details about the notification settings, we want to await this, but we should not turn initState into an async method. That's not recommended because initState is a method used internally by Flutter, and Flutter does not expect initState to return a future. Therefore, what you should do instead is add a little helper method, set up push notifications could be the name, and here you can use async, and then we simply want to call set up push notifications here and just not do anything else here. We can then move this code here into this setup push notifications method, and in here we can now safely await calling FCM request permission. Now here we'll get back our notification settings, and on this notifications settings object, we got a couple of properties that in the end tell us which kind of notifications can be received by this device here. Now here I'm actually not that interested in those settings, but you could fine-tune your code and the permissions you then send to this app here on this device based on the permissions that were granted. Here I'll just continue, and I'll continue by then calling getToken as a next step. And that's an important step, because in the end, this token, which getToken yields, is the address of the device on which your app is running. And it's this address which you would need to target this specific device. So if you have push notifications that should target individual devices by address, this here yields the address of the different devices. And you could then send this address with an HTTP request to your backend and store it in a database to connect it to other metadata of your user, for example. Now getToken returns a future, which in the end yields a string, and that string will be that address. So here we get that token by awaiting getToken, and then here I'll simply print this token. And with that, we should be outputting that token in the debug console. As mentioned, you could send this token via HTTP or the Firestore SDK, for example, to a backend and store it in a database and connect it to user data and do anything else you want to do. Here I'll just print it. And now if we reload this app here and it therefore restarts on this Android emulator, we should be prompted to grant permissions there as well. So here I will allow this. And once we accepted this, if we go back and we open the debug console, you should see your token there. If you don't see your token, simply restart the app. And now you should be able to see it here. And this cryptic string in the end is the address of your device. In this case, of this locally running emulator I got here.